If you're a pastor wondering what it's like to reopen your church, well, this video is for you because in this video, I cover week 2 of when we opened up our church here in Florida. In this video, we'll cover our week 2 numbers and how it changed from week 1 to week 2, what I think caused those changes. We'll talk about observations of people's behaviors, and we'll talk about moving forward from here. And if you stay till the end of the video, you'll find out how our strategy plays into opening up children's ministry within 3 weeks. If you're new to this channel, my name is Aaron and I'm a pastor here in Port St. Lucie, Florida, Sunlight Community Church. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe button for more videos like this. So Trump made houses of worship essential. And I'm not here to talk or debate politics, but you're probably wondering how your house of worship needs to open up and what you should have in mind and consider when you're doing so. And if you haven't checked out my week 1 video, be sure to check that out because it offers a lot of context to all the data that I'm going to be giving you in this video. But just to sum it up really quickly, we are a church that sees about 800 people, children and parents included, through the doors every week before Corona season. We do 2 contemporary services every week with a children's ministry of about 100 children. We have a school that's attached to our church, so that really influences how we think about our ministry. And something that I failed to mention before in the prior video that's I think really important is that we have a very young base of new believers, new Christians. Probably, I would say, within 2 years they became a Christian. And this might or might not affect things, but I think you should know that because, that might affect church attendance, regular church attendance, whether they think it's okay to come every other week or every week or, a couple times a month, and that's, fulfilling their quota, or, the regularity of tithing. So that, I think, affects, as far as Christian maturity, regular patterns and habits of a more experienced or a more mature Christian. Let's talk about the Florida context. Currently, at the time of this video, Florida has over 50,000 cases of confirmed COVID-19 cases. St. Lucie County, where I'm in, has 363 confirmed cases of COVID-19. And in our county, we have currently 28 deaths due to COVID-19. Finally, the last bit, this just came in this morning. Florida, or DeSantis, has raised all restrictions on youth-based activities in Florida. This includes summer camps. And so going into summer, this is going to play a major factor into how we decide about children's ministry, but more on that later in the video. Before we get to the numbers, let's just talk about communication, which I think is important because we sent out a mass text, mass email, Facebook post, Instagram post, on our groups page and on the top of our website. So I believe that the numbers last week could have be determined by hey, someone just didn't know. Maybe someone didn't realize church was opening. But after 2 weeks and mass communication in various different channels, I believe that most people know, if not all of our congregation knows, and the reason that they're not coming to church is because they choose not to come. So we have to determine why they're choosing not to come. Okay, so let's talk about numbers. In week 1, we had 62 total people, bodies in the door. In week 2, that increased to 72 people, bodies in the door. Week 1, we had 30 females. Week 2, we had 35 females. In week 1, we had 32 males. In week 2, we have 37 males. What does this tell us? This means couples came through the door for the first time. In week 1, we had 38 people above the age of 60 showing through the doors. But in week 2, we had 27 people above the age 60 showing through the doors, which is a little bit of a decrease, actually. In week 1, we had 7 people who were under the age of 18 come through the doors. But in week 2, we had 8 people. And of those 8 kids, 4 of them were ages 0 to 12. So that means 4 of them were under the age of 12. 4 of them were between 12 and 18. In week 1, we had 5 people wear a mask throughout service. But in week 2, we had 9 people wear a mask throughout service, which I think means that 2 couples, in particular that I know, wore their masks throughout service. Okay, so let's talk about why I think these numbers increased. I think you have a typical bell curve at work here. You have your early adopters who just want to come in. They don't really care too much. They're not cautious, or they're just plain and tired of and sick of, being quarantined. As we start to see the weeks go by, I think we'll start to see this trend up, but I think we're going to hit a sharp spike, and I'm going to let you know what that spike is. And to be honest, this is a very low attendance compared to our typically 800 person attendance. To only see about 72, 73 people is very low. It's underneath 10%. I think the primary reason we saw an increase of 10 people is that these 10 people, I believe, were maybe on the fence on week 1, and week 2 they just decided, okay, we're just going to go ahead and do that. They're seeing a lot of restrictions being lifted from Florida. They're seeing a lot of their friends and businesses opening up and going out, and there's just like the internal, like I'm tired of being at home type of deal. I'm realizing that for families, they might not want to come to church because they have tiny little kids and they're scared, or that they already have that social dynamic at home. One of those two factors at play. But if you're an older person who lives by themselves, they're going to want to get out. They're going to want to see people that was their major form of social interaction was church on Sundays, and maybe different ministries. So if you have an older congregation that has this primarily, you've got families and older people who live by themselves on two different opposing spectrums of social need. So the families are getting too much social activity, maybe, and then you have Christian maturity. Some people don't see a need to meet with and work out your faith with your congregation at large, and some people might see that need. And so you have those different levels of needs. And then, of course, your state guidelines. What is your state recommending? I know that Trump already lifted the ban, but people choose or choose not to go there. Is also, I think, depending on the size of your congregation. If you're a congregation of like thousands of people, 10% might be a lot. And if you're a congregation of like 1,000 or less, 10% might be nothing. So it's really, I think, these three areas that we need to consider as pastors, really in communication and opening up our doors for the first time. Let's talk behaviors and observations. I believe after week 2, we had more people hang around and talk. I think I saw the new people that came in, they left almost immediately, but more people stayed around the congregation and grouped up and circled up, as you can see here in this footage. Another thing that I noticed was that people were really looking for me for clear direction on what to do and where to go and really how to act. It's kind of a new cultural vibe if they just come back to church for the first time, and people are already, taking off their masks and they're walking with masks. They're looking around and they're wondering, are we going to be the weird ones with masks on? Is this a cultural norm? Is this okay? And they battle internal. Hey, spooky. As I was saying, and they're battling internally with, what's socially acceptable and what their fears or, what their concerns are with their own health. I think it's important for us as church leaders to be able to address those fears. Hey, you know what? You feel free to leave your mask on or take your mask off, whatever you feel comfortable with. There's hand sanitizing stations right here. Doors are way open. And so you could just go ahead and find your seat when you're ready. And I think just saying something like that, addressing their fears and knowing that like, hey, there are other people here, but you do whatever is comfortable for you. I think that was really comforting. And I think that's something that you should keep an eye out for if you're seeing people return. Especially week 1, everyone's just trying to figure each other out. Week 2, there's already a culture set in place that people are now visiting. So be sure to address those people as well. One thing that I thought was helpful is that we had our leadership right at the front of the doors, welcome people in and offering instruction as they go along. Some of the staff and some of the volunteers are really focused on like one thing and not like the overall comfortability, especially with no hospitality team. The security team was really it. And so they're just kind of keeping an eye on the doors and more security wise. We had some people go through the parking lot that they didn't recognize. So they were kind of like, okay, who's that? But as a leadership, our concern was more, hey, are you okay as a person? Being that pastorally role in that person's life at that moment. And I think that's really important to address their concerns. Take them seriously. Don't like dismiss them. At least we didn't. We tried not to. I mean, I could be pretty dismissive, but we try not to, and then just usher them in. So one thing about our operations is that we had roped off kind of a funnel from the main entrance doors into the sanctuary so that they didn't have to go out into the rest of the church building, like into the offices or the classrooms. But what ended up happening was that some of our friends and people that we saw and we missed started to gather before the service in that funnel. And so when new people were coming in, they would have to like adjust and move around those groups of people, which was, I think, is a mistake. I think that we should have had people keep on moving and not gather in circles before service while people are coming in through the funnel, just to keep traffic moving. And so we don't congest that, that route to the sanctuary. The big move forward now is children's ministry. And here's some things that we found interesting. As stated earlier, DeSantis has lifted all restrictions on children's activities, including summer camps and school and all that stuff. And so as a leadership, we thought, hey, if we're going to have a summer camp in school, it doesn't make any sense to not have children's ministry in church, because summer camp will see a lot more kids, and we're going to have children's ministry anyway. It's good probably see less kids in a cleaner and more unused environment. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't make sense. So what we're aiming for is a June 14th children's ministry launch. The week of June 8th is when our summer camp launches. So we're going to take that extra week and play it slow. and open up the week after the first week of our summer camp. Now, here's the tricky thing that we're finding with our children's ministry is that are the volunteers ready to get back to serving? If we have no volunteers, we got no children's ministry. So here's what our children's ministry director did. She posted a poll to our Facebook group, which, by the way, if you don't have a church Facebook group, you should definitely get one because we use it a lot for data and information gathering. She posted this poll saying whether or not, hey, would you be interested in coming to church with your family if children's ministry was available? At 17 and 13, it's not really a sizable demographic to really figure out, but I would say that's about half and half. That's about even. So this is what we're going to do now. Of course, this could all change, especially when I talk to our children's ministry director and seeing what her plans are based on the amount of volunteers. But as far as I know, we plan on having a nursery, we plan on having early elementary, and I know the youth director is planning on opening up his middle school and even starting his high school youth group that Sunday night. So it's full-on engagement in the children's ministry direction. Undoubtedly, we're going to have small classroom sizes, definitely 1-to-10 ratio. But as of right now, we won't have those smaller ministries. Like we have a boys ministry and a girls ministry. I'm not hearing that from the directors of those yet. Again, our church is opening up slowly in phases and not all at once in a one-time shot. And I think people are okay with that. So now I want to pose you a question that our leadership is now struggling with and trying to wrestle with to come up with an answer. Is that what is our new reality? And how do we adjust in the midst of it? No one knows how long this thing will last, but we see restrictions and recommendations being lifted every day in Florida. But we see that in our congregation. We see that even in our church leadership. People are very concerned about the health crisis and for their own selves and for the public in general. Is this what church is supposed to be like now? Is this the culture for church? Because if these restrictions and this public opinion last for about a month, I think the answer is easy. I think we just continue on. After a month, we'll kind of get back to normal. But if these restrictions and this public opinion lasts for September, October, November, December, until the end of the year, if this lasts that long, what is the church's response to that? Does the church push to say, hey, you know what? As a congregation, we should be meeting with each other, in corporate worship together in the lives of your brothers and sisters? Or do we meet them where they are and say, hey, you know what, we recognize a new culture, we recognize a new way of doing church, and so we're going to meet you where you are, and we're going to facilitate that. We're going to do more online Bible studies, more online community groups, more of this online stuff, until eventually your fear subsides and you come back to church and start meeting with your church family again. What is the church's proper response? And I know that I'm going to, get some people are going to say, no, we have to push them meeting back into church altogether right away. But that's a little bit of a problem for us personally because we have all these new believers and especially the fear is very real here. I mean, whether or not you want to debate, I don't want to debate, right? Like you could do that in the comment section below. But we want to take the approach of being, not left, not right. We want to be a pastor to the people as best we can where they are. And so that's just our approach. You could be yours or whatever. But this is the question that we're struggling with, is how much do you fight against culture and how much do you meet them where they are? Because you could go into other cultures and say, okay, this part of this culture is definitely bad. We got to definitely fight against this. And that we've seen that throughout history. But is this it's only temporary, right? At least I think it is. And that's why the question is, I think, how long does this last affects, at least for us, and maybe you could tell me if it shouldn't or not, how we address this with our congregation. Should we fight against culture? If it's only a month, if it's a week, or if it's like a year, got me. So let me know in the comment section below. Should we fight against culture and encourage people to come back to church as quickly as possible? Or should we meet them where they are and accept that this is a new reality of culture, at least for a temporary time period, and facilitate more online interaction? Anyway, thanks for watching this video. Again, if you haven't seen the first week of us opening up church, check out that video below, and I will see you guys in the next video.